Welcome, everybody. We're going to start off today in seated if you want to make your way there. And once you're seated, you can come to a couple of blankets if you'd like. Bringing your hips higher than your knees can be a really lovely way to take care of yourself here in this shape and try to take advantage of the amount of space that's available through the torso for breath. So I'll invite you to notice your personal, functional, natural breath, the breath that you came in with, the breath that you're breathing. And also start to notice sensations in the body. So maybe your first point of attention is the shoulders or the neck are feeling a little tight. So feel free to sort of start small movements that feel good. You can move with your breath to create a little bit of space in places that are feeling compressed, and to take just a few moments to let your body lead you in any movement that feels needed here. Maybe that's yoga things, maybe it's just like moving things. Starting to or continuing to develop this relationship between your attention and your body so that your body sends out a signal for space, for ease, for breath, and the parts of your physiology that are within your control, you can then respond. Once you feel like you moved in a way that allows for you to find a little more comfort, let's come back to where we started, right in that seated shape. And whether you're sitting on a chair or sitting on the floor, visualize as though you could internally rotate your thighs, maybe make a little shift in your body so that you physically are slightly internally rotating your thighs. And as a result, your sitting bones, those bony parts of your seat, can move a little further away from each other. Maybe keeping the spine nice and long, you can hinge way forward more to like your hamstrings than your seat and start to really feel the space between your sitting bones. And then as you breathe, try to inflate the lowest part of your belly and the lowest part of your back so that you can create as much space as possible between the pubic bone and the tailbone, front to back, creating space with that breath. And after exploring those four corners, maybe noticing yourself shifting or settling down into the pelvic floor, the very foundation of your body. The place with which we can align the vertebra on top of, feeling as though your spine is floating on top of your hips. Maybe aligning your neck or head in a particular placement so that it might feel like your head is floating on top of the neck. Now that our physiology has created the shapes of this pose, allow for your attention to start to merge with your intention. So as you breathe here, bringing as much attention as possible to that breath, to this moment, to what is within your control right now, which is what lies within the four corners of your mat. And as always, I want to invite you to find a practice today that serves you. So know that nobody can see. I'm pinned, so like you can see me, but we can't see you. Even if you have your camera on, I don't have my glasses on. You're very far away. So we can't, you've got full freedom here to serve yourself however you need to here to take care of what it is that you're craving that's going to serve your purpose on the mat as well as off of the mat. So with that in mind, let me tuck my little microphone cord in here, and we'll transition towards hands and knees. Take your time to do so. Remember, there's always an option for you to come to high kneeling shape with your hands firmly placed on the wall. And I'm going to set up for a moment just facing at you. I'm just going to scooch myself back a wee bit here. As you place your hands down on the ground, really being conscious of where it is your weight is falling. A lot of people tend to keep most of the weight into the wrists. So maybe by shifting your body forward, maybe by pulling on the hands a little bit, or maybe just by pushing down through the fingertips, or even slightly tenting the fingers, you can bring a little more of the weight of your upper body onto the fingertips as well as the wrists. And then we're going to use what's innate within us, our musculature, our fascia, our elastic parts of ourselves, to resist the pull of gravity downwards that can sometimes cause like pain or pressure downwards. So with your arms in this way, hugging the upper arms in towards the body, rotating. So instead of sending all the energy out through the shoulders, when you can externally rotate your arms, all of a sudden the collarbones broaden, the weight of the body moves into the back of the shoulders, and in fact we open up the upper lungs. So move from this like sunken down version of arms to be pressing the floor away from you, externally rotated arms. And then do the same with the back of the head. Notice the tendency to let gravity take the head forward and bring it back. Same with your low back. Keep a little bit of engagement here. And once again, just explore movements, explore setups that serve you. When you're ready, curl your toes under like I have here. So the tops of your toes, or like the balls of your toes, I guess the bottoms of your toes really are on the floor. Take an inhale breath and send your heart forward between the arms, just elongating into the upper back. Be conscious you're not just taking this from like your chin forward, but kind of take a big look outwards and then push back into the heels, keeping those arms externally rotated, getting that stretch through all the fingers, all the toes. Inhale, seek out, look out, reach forward from the sternum, from the navel, from the heart, and then pushing back. Reach forward, pushing back. So as you reach forward, notice the difference between just lifting your head versus actually sending your seat back, reaching the belly forward, reaching the chest forward, opening the collarbones, and looking forward. We'll just do that for 2 more breaths. And then flip the toes back so the tops of the feet are to the mat. You can take your knees wide if you'd like. Send your seat back in space and keep pushing through the arms here. Externally rotating, pushing through all 10 fingertips. Shoulders relaxed, away from the ears. And instead, as you press, broaden the collarbones, broaden the shoulder blades, keep that external rotation, engagement in the back of the neck, maybe even keep reaching forward through the chest, through the sternum. You can stay like this, or you can start to reach a little bit lower towards the ground, continuing to hike the elbows up or allowing them to rest to the floor. Support underneath your head and your neck with your support underneath your forehead, I should say, with hand on top of hand, with fist on top of fist, and let the back of the neck fully relax here. And in whichever version of the shape you're in, gently slide your hips over to the left, slide them to the right, sort of ping-ponging them back and forth to stretch a little bit into the inner groin, outer hip. Reaching the arms forward once again, lifting those elbows, externally rotating the arms. Come on back to your tabletop shape. From a tabletop, I'd like you to come to a high kneeling shape. And if the floor feels a little bit firm or hard underneath your knees, you can always fold the mat over and create a little extra padding underneath your knees. It's one of the best ways to create that extra support without sacrificing stability. So from here, notice where your hip bones are. You're going to step your left foot forward, and left heel is right in front of that left hip bone. Keep your right hip bone on top of your back knee. And come to 2 right angles here with your legs. You could have the back foot, top of the foot to the mat, rotating slightly to get those pinky toes down onto the mat, or you could curl toes under and bring the ball of the foot to the mat if you'd like. If you're feeling at all unstable here, take your front leg and heel toe the foot out to the left just a little bit. Create a little bit more space if needed. So your choice. Remember to press down through the top of your back foot so it's not all pressing into your knee here. Notice how long the low back is here, the low part of your spine settling into its neutral shape. Maybe take palm on top of palm in that space. You're going to inhale, and as you exhale, send your knee way forward to go as far in front of your second or third toe as you can without turning your bum up. So a couple of options. You can have your hands down to the floor here to support some extra, to help a little bit so there's not as much strain into the legs. Your hands could be onto a chair, onto a wall, onto your thigh. With control, you're going to pulse down, moving that front knee out towards the second or third toe, and then back up. So keep connected to pressing down through the top of your back foot this whole time. Pressing down as you come back, almost like you're dragging your back knee forward or back leg forward to meet your front. We're going to keep this up for a couple of times, almost like you're releasing and reeling back in, releasing and reeling back in. So at no point are you dropping down and up. Once you've done a couple of those, we're going to switch over to the other side. So you can just swing the leg around back to your 90-degree shape. Knees stacked with hips if you can. Heel to the front foot wider for balance if you need. As you come forward, make sure that front knee is tracking towards the second or third toe. Arms down on the floor for more support. They could be on your waist. They could be on your low back. Be conscious that this is happening all from those hip creases down. So big stretch and opening in the front of the hip. Big stretch and opening in the back of your front hip. And you're pulling that back leg towards your front leg as you come back up. Maybe 2 more times. And then bringing your knees down to the floor, moving however you're craving. In a breath or two, I'll ask that you bring yourself to standing. So you can step up or walk yourself through downward facing dog to come up towards standing. And then we're going to make our way towards a wall. So any wall will do that has like space for you to place your hand on there. So you don't necessarily have to have your yoga mat with you here. Take a stance that feels strong and stable, but your legs are a little wider apart. So as I step my legs wider than I might in like a Tadasana pose, I'm also going to take the feet to a bit of a V shape, but the legs are straight. You
can bring your hands to your waist if you'd like. Nice, tall, long spine. And here I want you to imagine that your that your legs and your feet are just the same as our arms and our hands in our last pose. So if you recall, we brought a little bit of weight towards the fingers. So here when you're standing, you'll bring a little bit of weight out towards the toes. If you recall, we brought a little bit of weight towards the pinky toe side of your foot, or of your hand. So here we'll do the same with our foot. And then that external rotation, so as though your inner thighs are wrapping around your outer thighs, as opposed to just hanging down into gravity. Everything is lifting up and against gravity. So I'd like you to stand sideways to the wall, reaching your left hand out, just barely grazing the wall with your left arm straight out. Hands can then come to the hips. You're going to keep the legs straight but not locked and send both hips over to the right. And then come back. So think of pressing from your left hip, pressing that right hip over. Be conscious you're not locking the knees, so there's no sensation of pressure or pain in the backs of your knees. Send your hips out to the side and back. And the next time they go out to the side, you're going to stay there. So notice my spine is nice and long, and I'm going to place my hand onto the wall, reaching my right arm to the ceiling. So I'm pressing the floor away from me. Knees are still soft, sending my left hip over so that I'm getting as much stretch in my right hip as I can. Then as this pressing gets stronger, maybe you're moving lower to the ground. Kitty, 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 kitty. No barks, my friend. Come. No barks, please. We're going to do that 2 more times. So sending both hips over, and remember, it's the press and the crease of your left hip that's going to tell you how far your torso can dip. So I could actually move a little further from the wall, and as I dip down, reaching my hand towards the wall. Then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So start off close enough that your feet are in a V, your hand can be easily to the wall. The crease of your right hip now is going to determine this bend over to the left. Almost like someone ties a rope around your hip and is pulling in this direction. As you go over, your hand can rest on the wall. Coming back up. Maybe staying there for a few breaths. Enjoying that space. You can reach your other arm up to the sky if you're not holding a tiny puppy. And make sure there's still breath on both sides of your body here. After you've done that a couple more times, coming up to stand, moving your body however you're craving for a breath or 2, and then we'll make our way back to standing near the wall, this time though with your seat just barely grazing the wall. So once more, I'm going to take a wide stance, one that allows for me to feel strong and grounded. The same stance that you would take if you were about to jump off of the ground. Leaning back to just barely graze the wall with your seat. And then allow for the rest of your spine to make connection with the wall. So you're not going to flatten out your back. Just make connection with your seat. So back up your feet till you barely feel it touching. And then the back of your shoulders, maybe the back of your head if you don't have to strain too far to reach, but maybe not. And then your arms are going to hang like empty coat sleeves. Now, as we transition to the next part of this practice, if you feel like you're being pushed over to the floor, just step your feet a little further from the wall, but try to keep your bum still connected. So from there, you're going to bring your chin to your chest and come to a forward fold, but vertebra by vertebra. So you'll feel the upper back connect to the wall and then disconnect from the wall. You'll feel the middle of your back sort of connecting to the wall, and then one vertebra at a time away from the wall. Arms are hanging. Once you're far enough forward that your spine is completely off the wall, then you're going to slide from your bum to your hamstrings, folding forward here, letting your head drop so you're going to look right between the knees here. And then to come back up, arms again will hang like empty coat sleeves. You're going to push into the feet and roll back up vertebra by vertebra. So you'll transition from touching the wall with your hamstrings to your bum, to your low back. Then each part of your spine can make connection to the wall, one vertebra at a time, from the lowest part of your spine all the way up to where you started. And we're going to do that one more time. So go ahead and find the shape and the speed you need. You're going to roll down vertebra by vertebra. So I've done this before, and I almost like to envision as though my spine has little suction cups on it. And as I roll forward, each little suction cup is coming off the wall one at a time. So it can almost feel or hear that like pop, 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 pop as each one comes off before the next. There you go, kitty. Once your whole spine is away from the wall, then it goes from low back or tailbone to seat to hamstrings. And really let the back of the neck relax. Look maybe higher than the knees to like between your thighs. Arms still hang as you come up, press down through the feet, rolling up. Take your time and try to move equal speed all the way back up. And make sure that you don't go back to those regular arches you always find. Really carve out the spine so that you're making contact with as many vertebrae as possible, one before the next, before the next, before the next. Once you're done that, we're going to come away from the wall, moving a little bit around your space. So you can make little figure eights with your hips. You go for a walk and swing the arms. Try to find movements that you don't find throughout the day. You could jump a little or bounce a little. You could do a few sun salutation flows. Whatever you feel like you need. This is where I should have like music and we have a little dance break. And then let all of that resettle. So we're kind of breaking up the way that we usually move throughout the day and come to like fresh start mountain pose. Can I tell you something funny? I saw the dog on my screen and I was like, there's a rat. I'm just not used to it yet. So once you're standing, take a micro step back, just so that I find that it's this way that we can really come under ourselves. Maybe wipe your feet a couple of times to feel your legs engage. What's the matter, little doggy? Maybe bounce the legs a couple of times. And then try to position the feet just like we did with our arms. So the weight of my arches are right underneath my pelvic floor, which is right underneath my diaphragm, which is right underneath the roof of my mouth, which is right underneath the crown of my head. I'm going to allow for that same breath that we found when we were seated. So a little bit of rotation internally to create some space between the sitting bones. It's so slight. It's not enough that you would drop through the arches. So it's like the top thigh internally rotates, the bottom from the knees down externally rotate, and we find ourselves somewhere in the middle. We are always the mediator. In doing so, we create as much space as possible across the pelvic floor. So when you breathe in, there's room for you to breathe down into the basement of your being, into the foundations, getting things moving from the ground up. So you can bring your hands to your waist. You could bring your hands together at the heart. They could reach if you want to increase the challenge here with both feet down to the floor Inhaling, filling up, expanding the core of yourself. And as you exhale and there's a natural contraction, you're just going to shift your weight ever so slightly to one side and march. Inhale, step down. As little shift as possible, lift up through that pelvic floor. Woo, and march. Inhale, expand. Your exhale. So you just go ahead and wait for it. March. So when you exhale, there's a natural contraction that's happening and there's a lift. Visualize yourself kind of pulling up and in from the base of your foundation here, from the pubic bone, tailbone, hip points, lifting right through the center of your being. Inhale is grounded, is expansive, is curious and inviting. Exhale is controlled and together and looking inwards and from the depths. Make sure that there's inhale as you're moving, not exhale, move down. Inhale, but it's coordinated. It's all happening. We're not existing in these separate realms of ourselves, but all together. Maybe the next time your right leg is up, you're going to choose to keep it up. I'm just turning to the side to show that as I'm marching, I'm not leaning back to lift my leg up. I'm not lifting my hip to lift my leg up. My torso, everything from the leg creases up stays exactly the same, and I'm just bending right at the hip crease. So if you have your one leg floating, maybe you're going to experiment with opening, closing. Only bring your foot so high that it's happening just at your hip. You're not shortening your side to try to bring your foot up higher. Grounding back down to both feet for a few breaths till you feel strong and stable, internally and externally rotated, pulled up through the center, connected to your breath. And it sounds like so many things happening at the same time, but that's because that's what life is. I like to use the analogy of a car when you're really throwing me off on this side, little girl. When you first learn to drive a car, it's like everything. You have to start the ignition, stir up your seatbelt, check in your blind spots. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, check your mirrors, stop, 1, 2, 3. It's all these things. And then eventually this becomes second nature. A little bit of a dynamic tree. So once you're there, feel free to move. Or if natural movement is happening, feel free to accommodate for that. There's no rule that says you have to be a tree that's made out of steel. Once you're done exploring on both sides, maybe that's now, maybe that's in a few, reconnect in your mountain pose. Maybe a little bit of a standing lymphatic flush where you're standing, knees are soft, and you're kind of combining lifting your heels and bouncing your knees so that the body kind of bounces like it's on a little mini trampoline, but it's not too much for your legs. You could be swaying side to side as you do that. If I were just doing my heels, it's a lot for my calves. If I was just doing my knees, it's a lot for my thighs. So I kind of combine a little bit of both. You could do the same if you kind of bicycle your knees. Lift one heel, send the knee forward, lift the other heel, send the knee forward. And the point is to get those waters stirring, to get things moving that maybe you didn't move today. What do you think of lymphatic flush? My little pipsqueak? And then coming back to your mountain pose for a couple of big breaths. As you feel ready, we're going to make our way all the way back down to the mat. Lying onto your back this time. Knees bent, feet to the mat. So knees bent, feet to the mat is always an option for you. I always mention it as the default. But if that's uncomfortable for some reason, know that you don't have to bring your knees bent, feet to the mat. I just teach under the assumption that the majority of people have a bit of a roundness to their seat. So if I bring my legs straight, I'm actually like the roundness of my seat is making it difficult for my leg to be straight and not over flexed in order to meet the ground. Right in this moment, I should move my hand. I look like I'm pinup modeling. So maybe your knees are bent, maybe they're not. Now, lately I've been experimenting with bringing my fingers interlaced either to touch the top of my head or rest just above me or even under my head so that I can kind of open through the shoulders. Now that takes a lot for the shoulders. So if that's sore for your neck or tight for your shoulders, or if you're somebody who tends to have tight shoulders or neck, start down, palms up, and slowly kind of like, what's that called? Snow angel your arms up until they reach kind of your max, and then maybe experiment with bending the elbows, maybe not. Palms up, palms down, whatever you'd like. From there, moving your thighs into the center, into the center. So as I do this, I'm going to keep my shoulder blades, my heart facing straight towards the ceiling. You're welcome to turn your head if you'd like, but the intention is that this is happening again at those hip creases. Now, instead of dropping thighs inwards, we're going to move thighs outwards. So you might choose to heel toe your feet closer together. One at a time, thighs move out. Thighs move out. Thighs move out. So notice how I do this. My seat and my low back still stays on the ground. I'm not just rocking to the side. So my belly button actually, in fact, stays facing towards the ceiling the whole time as well. Now, once you're done with that, legs wherever they're comfortable, arms towards the ceiling. See if you can let the weight of the arms fall back so you could feel the shoulder blades making contact. So picture behind your heart on either side and see if you can locate these bony landmarks. Now, without moving your arms, so I'm actually going to clench my fists and kind of lock my elbows straight. And without moving from the arms, can you bring the shoulder blades further apart from one another and then towards one another? So there will be movement that happens in the arms, but it doesn't come from the arms. It's coming from collarbone, shoulder, shoulder blade. So shoulder blades away from each other. You might feel like more of your upper back makes contact with the floor. Shoulder blades towards each other without going down or up on the spine, just across your back. It sounds like a very simple task, but it can be really difficult, especially over the years. A lot of us tend to form fascial stiffness or like kind of like rust on a door hinge between the rib, the shoulder blade and the rib cage. So the shoulder blade ought to be able to just slide on top of the rib cage, but that can take some time. So if you're not actually experiencing that sensation today, or if you're noticing a whole slew of sort of compensations, while maybe shoulders can go up and down, then try opening the arms out wide. Notice when you do that, the shoulder blades come towards each other. And then give yourself a hug. Notice the shoulder blades move away from each other. So now we're moving those shoulder blades, but we're moving them from our arms. They're still moving. Shoulder blades away from one another. Excuse me, shoulder blades towards one another as your arms open wide. Give yourself a squeeze and you'll feel your upper back sink towards the floor, shoulder blades away from one another. So keep that movement going, really noticing what's happening in my back, what's happening behind my heart. And then if you bring your arms to stillness, can you reproduce that sensation? Maybe yes, maybe not today. Now, in a moment or two, I'm going to ask you to make your way towards your final pose, which is a comfortable shape, one that we'll use for integration between our practice here on the mat and our practice out in the world. So what I'll invite you to do is start to round out your practice here with any movements that feel good for you. Breath practices, movements we've done in class, anything you're craving. It doesn't have to be a yoga thing. And then once you feel comfortable, as comfortable as possible for this moment, go ahead and make your way into a pose of rest. Ideally, it's a shape that allows for as many muscles as possible to relax and let go without creating any tension or pinching or pain. Finding yourself into that shape, and then go ahead and feel yourself shift and adjust within that shape to make it just perfect for you today. If after a few shifts and adjustments, it's still not feeling grounded or restful, maybe finding a different pose. And then once your physical body is as relaxed as possible, keeping your consciousness fully present, even though the body is at rest. So maybe leaving the eyes slightly open, maybe utilizing a practice that we've used in one of our other yoga classes or in the meditation class on Wednesday. If today you find your mind wandering, on your next exhalation in the back of your mind, counting 1, and patiently wait for the breath to naturally fill, to fully empty, and then in the back of your mind, counting 2, and then 3. And you'll continue to gently keep this count in the back of your mind. If you lose count, starting over again at 1. Otherwise, continuing to count your exhale breaths until you hear my voice again. So letting go of this gentle counting in the back of your mind. And starting to slowly rub your hands together, creating a little bit of warmth and heat, and then starting to make that movement faster and faster. So you create a lot of warmth and heat. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. In just a moment, we're going to dome the hands so that the palms don't actually touch on the eyeballs, but the fingertips will touch to the eyebrows. The heel of the hand will touch to like the sinuses. So rub, 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 and then make your hands into little cups. If they're facing upwards, ready to catch the rain, turn them to face palms to you, and the palms are going to float above the eyeballs without pushing down on them, capturing all that heat into the eyes. With your eyelids closed, look straight up to 12 o'clock, like you're trying to look up to your own brain. And then over to 1 o'clock. So really pull up like there's the face of a clock on your ceiling, looking all the way back and up, over slightly to the right, 1 o'clock, then 2 o'clock. Feeling maybe the muscles behind the eyes, feeling this heat soothing those busy eyes, looking as far to the right, straight over to the right as you can, like you're trying to look into your right ear. Then down to the right slightly, to the right earlobe. Then down towards your right elbow or underarm. And then straight down to 6 o'clock, looking straight down to the toes. Over to 7. Over to 8. Really pull those eyeballs way over to the left, like you're trying to look into your left ear. Up to the left eyebrow. Up just slightly left of center, and then all the way back where you started at 12, straight up the bridge of the nose to the center of the head. And then letting that relax. You can take your hands gently down. Notice your breath. Notice the amount of support beneath you, and start to slowly move your body however you're craving. Let the ground become a little heavier beneath you, so it's as though you can sink down into warm or cool sand, as though somebody increases gravity by a few percentages, and you could just lull yourself over to one side and rest on the side for a few breaths. Once you feel grounded here after a few breaths, use your arms, maybe kick out your leg, support your body as you come all the way up towards any comfortable seated shape, and use the last few moments of your class to find yourself comfortably seated however you'd like here. So we're starting off just like we're ending off just as we started, rather. Notice the breath. Notice how your body's feeling. Notice how fast or how slow your thoughts are coming. Your level of energy, your ability to focus maybe on this present moment. You're welcome to join me if you'd like in thanking the people upon whose land we practice. Maybe taking a moment to thank the lineage of yoga and our teachers that brought this practice down to us. All the people in our lives that made it possible for us to practice together today. And lastly, gratitude to yourself for having made the time to move, to be curious, to balance. So thank you all so much for joining me tonight.